Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Sandwich of Coherency. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this. Britney Griner has been returned to the United States in a very questionable prisoner trade with Russia for the arms dealer Viktor Bout. Many of you are familiar with Britney Griner's name, and many of you have only heard about Viktor Bout's name only recently due to the situation of the prisoner swap. So many aren't familiar with the severity of the actions that this man has caused throughout the years. Now, the thing with Britney Griner, we have to go ahead and jump into and understand, and a lot of people are going to be upset with what I have to say. Some are going to understand what I'm saying, is that according to her, she packed her own stuff. She took it international. So let's understand the realities here. She said she made a mistake. She made a mistake. There are many people sitting in jail right now for marijuana charges who said they made a mistake. Let's just keep that in mind. But mind you, it started as multiple cartridges of THC, according to the media, which then became one cartridge, and then that one cartridge went from THC to CBD. And the American media is telling you, oh, it's just CBD. The Russian media is telling you it's THC. Who are you going to believe? And it's crazy because people want to believe the American media, even though this is the same media that they've been against the entire time. But they're for them now because they're saying things that they want to say, or that they want them to say. But the reality is Britney Griner packed her bag, put it on a plane, went international. She violated international laws by doing this. Okay, Russia was in every right to imprison her, going through her bags. But let's accept the reality. This is probably not the first time that she's done this. It just so happens to be that the U.S. is funding the Ukraine with weapons and money to fight against the Russians. So the reality is they decided that, you know what, we're going to do something about this. And that is exactly what they did. They used her as a talking point. They made an example of her. And the thing is everybody's upset and they're saying that she was wrongfully imprisoned, she was wrongfully charged, the punishment was excessive for what she had. And you know what? In the United States, you are absolutely correct, but the United States is not Russia. And the United States does not get to dictate how Russia enacts its laws. Actually, the United States doesn't get to tell any country how they get to enact their laws, because the United States doesn't take into account laws of other countries when imprisoning people from other countries in America. Now, this is not the first time that something like this has happened, where an American has gone to a foreign country and done some bonehead nonsense that got them a whole lot of media attention, and they fell at the whims of the government that they were beholden to at that time. 1994, you had, I believe his name is Michael Fay, who was the American who went to Singapore, who decided to vandalize Singapore, cars, vehicles, businesses, stealing street signs, destroying property. Oh yeah, he got caught and he was subject to 6 lashes from a rattan cane. It's called caning in Singapore, and it's a punishment they created to stop graffiti, vandalism, and abuse. And an American went over there and did the very things that he shouldn't have done. And what did the American government come out and do? Well, this is unjust. According to Bill Clinton, this is uncalled for. You shouldn't do that to him. You know, but at the same time, the Singaporean government's like, yo, he came into our country. He broke our laws. He vandalized our stuff. You don't get to tell us how to enact our laws. It doesn't work that way. So guess what? He got caned. Oh, he got his 6 lashes. And the United States could have got involved. They could have tried and stop it, but you would have had an international crisis. So this is not the first time something like this has happened. And the person that was at fault was guilty of the crimes. Britney Griner is guilty of the crimes. The problem we're having with this situation is optics. And the optics are the Americans had a choice. They had a choice between the American soldier and Britney Griner. That's the reality. Them telling you that they didn't have a choice is absolute nonsense, because if you believe that they didn't have a choice, then you have to also accept that the negotiator for this trade is one of the worst in the world and should be fired from their job. How they got that position, one can only imagine. Okay? But it's all about optics. It's all about optics. The Democrats, the president can't be seen trading an American soldier when many of the left that they hope to vote for them hate police, they hate military, and they spend a whole lot of time stating how they hate the United States, how they hate straight men, how they hate white people, and all this other nonsense, okay? So they got the choice between trading for that, or do we trade for the black lesbian? That's what they're looking at. Which one is going to garner them more votes in the next election cycle coming up? Is it going to be the American soldier? Or is it going to be the black lesbian? Who's being portrayed as a victim here? Mind you, this is the woman who is a gay lesbian. Gay black lesbian, okay? And I want to pull this up real quick on the screen so you can have an idea of why I'm saying this, because as you can see here in The Guardian, now mind you, this is from 9 years ago. This is from, I believe it's 2013. And this is when Russia passed an anti-gay law, to basically get rid of homosexual propaganda aimed towards children mostly. But basically it's just an anti-gay propaganda law, which is what it is. Which apparently, according to this headline, Russian anti-gay law prompts rise in homophobic violence. This is the place she chose to go. As a gay black woman, she chose to go to a place where they have anti-gay laws. Why? Because money. She spent so much time insulting the United States. It's patriarchal. She hates the United States. They hate gay people. They hate black people. They hate everybody that's a non-white male. So her choice was to go to one of the whitest countries, which they say hates black people and hates gay people. She left the United States to go to Russia for money. Okay, you talked all this shit about the United States, and then you get there, you break these laws in this country. And so you and your family and your friends and everybody spent all this time talking about how much you hate the United States, but now you want the United States to come get you. You want that American freedom. You want to be privy to that American judicial system, which you spend so much time insulting. You wished you could have been caught with that nonsense here in the States, because this would have been a non-crime. You would have never served any time at all. You'd have paid a fine and been on your way. But you went into another country and broke their laws. And if they want to give you 9 years, if they want to give you 20 years, there's nothing America can do about it. You made that choice. And she says, she said, I made a mistake. Well, there are lots of people sitting in American prisons who made mistakes and have said the same words. I made a mistake. But you don't see the president or Democrat politicians breaking down the doors to get them released from jail. Why? Because the optics. It's the optics. It doesn't look good. And it's not going to get them reelected, because that's what this is really all about. So let's understand who Viktor Bout is, because this is going to basically paint the picture of why this was a boneheaded trade. This should have never happened. And if it was really all or none, the United States probably should have gone with none, because there are implications to this that are going to be farther reaching after this is out of the media, out of the airwaves. Viktor Bout will be a free man going about his business. Will he be working for the Russian government? It's a very high possibility, considering that in a recent interview that he did with Russian media, he keeps a picture of President Putin in his cell the whole time. He's very proud to be Russian. He is quite on board with Russia going into Ukraine and taking back the Ukrainian government, taking that country back. He's on board with that. He openly stated if he could join, he would. If he could volunteer, he would. He's basically saying, if I could get into this fight, I will join this fight. That's the reality that we're facing here. And the United States decided to give him back. My personal opinion, this is just my opinion here, they knew what they were doing because they understand that if this guy is released, there's a great chance he might go back into doing what he did before, which is what the United States needs. Why? Because we need somebody to create conflict so that we have more reason to invade other countries, to sell more weapons, to make more money. Keep the war machine going to fund the United States. We got to get the money from somewhere, considering we're sending it American taxpayer dollars to every other nation in the world, but for some reason can't find a penny for the American citizens. So I want to bring this up real quick, and we're going to look at this article from Reuters. Who is Viktor Bout? And that's important to understand because you can't really grasp the gravity of his being released without understanding what he, just a little bit of what he has done. Just a little bit of what he's done. Even just a little bit of what he's done. So let's see here. Who is Viktor Bout? The Russian arms dealer swapped for Griner. So let's go ahead and scroll down here. Let's see. Variously dubbed the Merchant of Death and the Sanctions Buster for his ability to get around arms embargoes. Let's see. Bout 55 was one of the most wanted men prior to his 2008 arrest on multiple charges related to arms trafficking. So let's see. For almost 2 decades, mind you, 2 decades, we're looking at 20 years of this nonsense here. This guy had terrorized people around the world. But Bout became the world's most notorious arms dealer, selling weaponry to rogue states, rebel groups, and murderous warlords in Africa, Asia, and South America. Oh, that's very surprising. His notoriety was such that his life helped inspire a Hollywood film, 2005's Lord of War, starring Nicolas Cage as Yuri Orlov, an arms dealer loosely based on Bout. Let's see. Is there more? Yes, there is more. So, let's see. A 2007 biography entitled Merchant of Death. I want to point something out here. With the Soviet Union's vast air fleet disintegrating, Bout was able to acquire a squadron of around 60 old Soviet military aircraft based out of the United Arab Emirates, by which he could supply his products around the world. And mind you, he also worked for the United States. The United States was using his planes for them to ship our shit to wherever we were sending it to. What were we sending? Aid and stuff like that, I guess, you know. But, let's see. Even so, Bout, who first appeared on the CIA's radar amid reports of a shadowy Russian citizen trading arms in Africa, was by the turn of the millennium one of the most wanted men in the world. But Bout, whose clients included rebel groups and militias from Congo to Angola and Liberia, had little in the way of firm ideology, tending to place business above politics. In Afghanistan, he variously sold guns to Islamist Taliban insurgents and their foes in the pro-Western Northern Alliance. According to the book Merchant of Death, it said Bout supplied guns to the then Liberian president and warlord Charles Taylor, now serving a 50-year prison term for murder, rape, and terrorism. And according to various Congolese factions, as well as Philippine Islamist militant group Abu Sayyaf. So, mind you, this guy has been selling weapons to both sides of the aisle to keep conflicts going, just like the Americans did to keep the money coming in. He was caught in 2008 because he got in a covert sting operation. They got him agreeing to sell military-grade weapons to Colombians with the sole purpose of killing American citizens, American soldiers, government personnel. This guy was very anti-American. He even stated so in the recordings that the United States was his enemy, and he was happy to help them acquire these weapons to kill his enemy. He even offered to send people to train them on how to use the weapons to kill his enemy, which happened to be United States and United States citizens. You're talking about a guy who was funding both sides of the Taliban and anti-Taliban. He was funding conflicts in the Congo. There are thousands of people around the world who are dead because of this guy. Mind you, there are thousands of people around the world that are dead because of this guy. There are thousands of families who are suffering and have suffered because of the actions of this guy. People around the world. And the United States just handed him over for the WNBA player who herself violated Russian laws. If Britney Griner had been over there and was just imprisoned willy-nilly and hadn't done anything wrong, there were no cartridges, there was no drugs or anything like that. They caught her because she was American and the United States is in conflict with Russia over Ukraine. We could somewhat justify this prisoner swap. We would be saving an innocent person. That would be more understandable, but that is not the case here. Britney Griner was as guilty as it gets. And people will say, well, she only admitted to her guilt to help speed up the process. No, it wouldn't have sped up shit. Russia's not inclined to have to trade with the United States. Russia could have said, no, we're not trading anything. She's going to spend her 9 years in jail. Just like Viktor Bout has been serving his time in prison. You gave him 25 years. He's been there for 14. Let him serve the rest of it. She'll serve all of hers. It literally could have gone that way. But the Russian government knew that the United States is worried about optics. And they knew that if given the choice, they would take the one which might garner them more votes to stay in power. And now the Russian government, the Russian people, as well as citizens in other countries around the world, they're laughing at the United States. The United States is now, it was already a laughingstock over these past couple of years, but it's now an even larger laughingstock, simply because the United States failed, absolutely failed in this situation here. And I want to reiterate here, they traded an arms dealer responsible for thousands of deaths around the world who was caught attempting to sell arms to Colombians for the sole purpose of killing Americans. For the sole purpose, I want to repeat that, of killing Americans. They traded this man for Britney Griner, the WNBA star, who put herself into this pickle. The very same person who had negative things to say about him in the United States. It's patriarchal. They hate black people. They hate gay people. They hate women. It's the most racist, sexist, misogynist country in the world. And she went to a country that the same people who said all this nonsense said hates black people, hates gay people, hates women. It's one of the most racist, sexist, misogynist countries in the world. She went there for money. And thought, because I'm a celebrity, nothing's going to happen to me. Sorry, baby, that's Russia. It's two different places, two different judicial systems. They don't overlap. But we have to accept a new reality. Will Viktor Bout return back into what he was doing beforehand, considering that he supports the Russian invasion of Ukraine? He does not believe that the Ukraine should even exist as its own independent state? It's very likely he might. And if that's the case, we have to accept that any lives lost will be the fault of the president, Joe Biden. That's the reality of it. You've got a man who went to prison for trying to sell arms to Colombians to kill Americans that we just released, to Russia, who's in a conflict with the Ukrainians and by extension the United States because we are supplying them with arms and money. And the reality is that, again, should there be any life loss, should there be anything that happens because of Viktor Bout returning to his previous role of being an arms dealer, those lives lost or injuries caused will be the fault of the current president. And you can be guaranteed that civilians around the world will look at the United States as an enemy moving forward because, well, you traded an actual murderer, someone who's responsible for thousands of deaths around the world, for a WNBA player that wanted to get high. But I thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.